Hi everyone, welcome to the lab session on system hacking. So these are the following topics that we would be covering today. I mean the ones that we discussed yesterday. So wherein under system hacking, attackers usually gain access to a machine, and then with escalated privileges, they execute programs and applications, and then using some of the utilities or softwares, they clear their tracks, they cover their tracks. So broadly that I have classified today's lecture into, some of the points. So what we would be doing is first we would be initiating the database for Metasploit. And throughout the session, we will be taking the example only from Metasploit. So let me just first initiate the VM, which is a victim VM, so that we can take the examples. Okay. So like in your own time, after you finish off with the session, please look for ways to install Metasploitable 3, which is a kind of a victim virtual machine on which you can try whatever we discuss in this session. So this is over the internet. I got access to a particular machine or in one of the labs. So and it uses Metasploitable 3. So we would be discussing how to do initial scans, though it is actually a step before this. But as it does not take much time for Nmap to figure out, and also we can actually do a vulnerability scan using a script. So we'll include that in this particular session. So let me just see if I'm connected to the VPN. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually connected. I think this particular command window is much more visible. So we'll be using this one. Okay. So let's assume for now that the victim machine is up and we have a IP address as a target for us. And we have completed the basic recon before and footprinting. And we have collected some information that, okay, these are the machines that we can attack. And for this particular session, we are going to use only one target. Okay, there's not going to be a subnet attack or enumeration steps that are additionally required. Okay, so just to cover those three main steps in system hacking. First is to gain access, then exploit it, and understand the difference between some of the types of payload, some basic commands that can be used in Metasploit. And other than these basic commands, you might come across much more sophisticated commands, but they might not be required as of now, so that you can try on your own. Okay. So as far as Metasploit is concerned, we first need to, use MSFDB in it. Okay. I'm using a user which does not have root access, so I have to use the word called sudo before it. So, but if you are using root user, then you might not have to use it. So as it says that I have already initialized the database and it is already configured. Okay, so once it is done, I can actually go and launch Metasploit using MSF console. So it takes a little bit of a few seconds before launching, and it shows a very nice banner. And this particular banner actually changes every time you initiate a session. Okay, so I'm just going to clear the screen. Okay, so let's say you forgot to initialize the database before launching MSF console. Then it is better that always you use a command called db status, okay, which will actually tell you whether it is connected to the MSF DB or not. Okay, so we are initiated the database, we are there in the MSF console, and let's go one by one through these commands, which we will be using during the session. So first one is workspace. So workspace is like, separate a space in which a set of files in the DB itself, which pertains to a project on which you're working right now. So it is always good to organize the work in terms of workspaces. So how do you actually use it in Metasploit? So let's see that. So we just use the word called, let me zoom in the screen a little bit more. So we use the word called workspace. And if you say workspace help, okay, then there are various other options. Say you want to delete a workspace, you can use capital D to delete all the workspace. And if you want to delete a specific workspace with a given name, you can do that. And if you want to add, you can use tag small a and give the name of the workspace. So for this session, let us create a workspace. Add a workspace. Okay. So it is added. And by default, now we are in the context of a workspace. So I'm going to clear the screen and we'll use that workspace command again. So you can see that the name with which I created, it has highlighted it in red and there is a star. So this will give you an indication that this is the workspace in which you are working right now. Okay, so let's go on to the another topic. This is search. So say you should know like how to basically search for modules that are there in Metasploit. Okay, and you can work. You can use the word called search, and there are various options. You can actually search by and types, and you can pass on various options, and you can also specify the keywords and the value that you want to search. So some of the keywords that are available for you to search are AKA, which stands for also known as. Then you can search by author or by architecture or CVID, okay, by date and by type also. So here the one that is important is the type. So if you want to search a payload, you search type colon payload, and then you can give the keyword with the name or whatever string you know about, whatever idea you have. Okay, then you can use type exploit. I hope you remember the difference between exploit and a payload. So just to reiterate, an exploit is something that gives you an initial entry into the target, and with that entry you basically get a foothold on the target. And when you have the foothold, you try to upload a payload so that you can execute some kind of a shell, which gives you access and higher access to execute other applications. Okay. So, there are some examples also given. So by CVE, you can give this year by type, you can use it like this. Clearing the screen. Then let's say you've figured out as to, okay, this is the module inside MSF console or Metasploit you're going to use. And that is the one that you want to run against the target. Then you can use the word called use, and you have to give the path or the number which comes with it. Okay, we will see that example when we start doing the exploitation on the target. Okay. Then once you have set the options, like always the modules require you to set some values of variables. Okay, and for setting the values of variables, if globally you want to set it, then you can use the word set g. Otherwise, you can use the word set, and you can specify the name of the variable and the value. Similarly, you can unset a value by using the keyword called or the subcommand called unset. Then for the purpose of saving your results so that you can create reports later, or you can refer yourself whenever you need, you can use the command called spool. And after that, you can use save. So let's say if you did a scan using nmap from within MSF console, then what services were discovered, you can use command called services to list those. And to list the targets that have been used in the current context of a workspace, you can use the word called hosts. So we'll be going through all of these, okay, again while actually doing our scans and getting ahead with the steps of an exploit. Okay, so let's scan the target as it doesn't take much time. Okay, so I'll just go to the console. And here when you're using nmap, you have to actually prepend it with a string called db underscore. The db underscore nmap. Let's do a sim scan in a very verbose mode, and then take the script as one, and we specify the target. Wait, I think the machine would have booted up by now. Yeah, so we have the target IP, and then you press enter. Sorry, I made a spelling mistake. Now, because we are scanning it under the mode very verbose, so it would actually give debugging message and other extra messages that are required for us to see whether it is progressing, how it is progressing, how much time is it taking, and all that. So it reports on the time that it actually started at this particular time, and it has initiated a ping scan. So then, because it's a default scan, so and we haven't specified any port numbers, or we haven't given any range. So whatever it considers to be most important 1,000 ports, it is going to list that for us. So it says that it has discovered these many ports, okay, and the port number along with the protocol that services are using on those ports. So it says that we have like some 4 seconds remaining. Okay. So currently it says that about 90% tasks have been done, and again another 7 seconds are remaining. So from these messages themselves, you can see that famous ports like 139 and 445, which are actually related to Samba services, okay, that have been given. Let me just scroll up. Okay, yeah, we were on this line, yeah. So you can see that it has actually discovered 9 ports which are open and the services that are running on it. And to know the version of the services, we could have actually used tag small s and capital V, so that it could have reported the versions of the services also, which are quite helpful while we search for exploits, which is the next step. Because we know that first we need to know, like in earlier session, we used Nessus and other tools such as Nikto and Qualys to see whether the vulnerabilities are there or not. Now, those vulnerabilities are actually exploitable or not. That's the stage we are here. So this is something, a bit of a prerequisite before we reach on to that stage. So you can see that it highlights that Nmap itself, because it's a very known and old vulnerability discovered long back in 2017, and people have actually created and published disclosures on it. So that is why it is there as part of Nmap also. So this kind of a vuln scan, if there is a new vulnerability which has not become part of Nmap, so you might not get these messages. For this particular session, okay, yeah, we have a CVE ID, and it also has highlighted that is a very high risk factor, and it relates to version 1 of Samba server. And there is an ID also called MS17010. So what do you think we should do after this? Okay, so there's a target, and we did the initial scan. We found the vulnerability. Now let us search for this vulnerability and see whether what kind of exploits do actually exist. So if you remember in previous sessions, I told you about a website called CVE Details. So you can use this ID. Okay, I'm just copying it, and you can go to cvedetails.com. Okay, and then you can enter it here and wait for a few seconds so that it automatically lists it. Okay, then you can click on it. So you can see that after the disclosures have happened, people have created exploits and they have actually made them as part of Metasploit modules. It might not happen for every vulnerability out there in the open, but for this one, there are some Metasploit modules that are already there, which can be used to exploit this. So as you can see, all the details are there here, and it has the list of references. So under the references, just see that the reference to exploitdb.com is there, where we can find the exploit related to this vulnerability. Okay, here another link is there, and 41987 another link is there. Okay, let's take the first one. Okay, so exploitdb is the first place where anyone would go and search for an exploit which is mapped to a vulnerability like this. And this can be done offline also, because there is a utility called search exploit, which is by default present in Kali. Okay, I'll show that to you also. So you can see the full path of the module is also given here, okay, which needs to be used. And all of the code details are there as to, it's written again, Metasploit is written in Ruby. So this particular module has been written in Ruby. Okay, so you can have a look as to how exploit is written, and you know how basically it is able to send data which can actually send you a reverse shell. Okay, we'll discuss about the shells also. Okay, let's do an offline search. So we say search exploit and we give that name. Okay, let's give this string ms underscore 17 underscore 010. Okay, let's search for blue. Okay, let's give another name to it. So you need to figure out some kind of a unique string which can help you in searching for it using search exploit. Let's use this. Okay, it says that it does not have that, or maybe I need to use probably the tags. Okay, so let's do this particular search using Metasploit itself. Okay, because it exists as a Metasploit module. So we use the word search ms17 010. Okay, so it has actually listed some matching modules. So the one that we were looking at is this one. Okay, SMB MS 17010. And also there is a version which is, but this is a scanner. Okay, and this is the eternal blue. Yeah, with this probably, exploit, because the one that you were searching was an aux module, but the one that we probably need is an exploit, right? So we could actually try that also. Search exploit eternal, wait, eternal blue. Yeah, it's there. So what I wanted to show here is that even if you are not completely aware, of the name and you haven't actually searched earlier, then also actually you can search for an exploit like this. Now, the search exploit would give you, the path of a module, and if a particular, say it's a Python script, and I can actually locate it. Probably it should be there on the system. 42315. Yeah, it's there. So you can see that it is actually part of exploit DB, and under exploits, under Windows, it is there. So, but this particular detail you might not be able to use with Metasploit, this path, because it does not have it is not following that convention, and you never know whether it is part of the Metasploit module or not. As one of the modules, it exists or not. That's why it's important to search again in the Metasploit as well, which actually gives you, the actual path related to this. Now let's now we have searched that it has some kind of a rank as average, and it has been checked, and it is something similar to the vulnerability that was there that we did the search for. Okay. So again, I'll just scroll up the screen so that you can see the scan which was done by Nmap. Okay. Just try to cross check it once or twice. Okay. Always before using an exploit, because it might not be successful if you do not pay attention. Okay. So let me come down and see. Okay. These we have found a matching module by using the keywords, I mean the command search, and we have also searched it by MS17010, and we know that it is actually related to this vulnerability. So we have an exploit now. So the next step is to use it. Yeah, and after the scan, if you want to list the services and hosts within the Metasploit, you can use these commands, services and hosts, which will be useful later. If you even if you don't remember the services that were scanned, you don't have to scroll up the screen again and again. So you can use these commands, and you might not know which against which you might not remember after many steps that these are the hosts. Maybe more than one hosts are there. Okay, so you can use these commands to for the Metasploit to fetch those details for you. So I'm going back to Metasploit, and I've used the command services. So this is how it's listed. On the far most left, you can see the host is mentioned against all of the services that are there. Say I was using some other a target, okay, within the same session, then would have been listed as a new row and against the service and the port on which it is running. Then I can make use of the command called hosts, wherein the address, IP address, IPv4 address is given, and it has reported OS name as unknown. But somehow from the previous scan that we had, we know that it is Windows. And if it has 135 running, which is like MS RPC, and along with that, we also search the exploit with MS 17 TAC 010. So it means that it is Windows host. Okay, so you can keep that, remember that for the later steps. So let's move on to the step of gaining the access to the target. Okay, so we need to basically use the module by using the results from search, and then set some options by using the command set and the variable names, and then we would run the exploit. Okay. Now, before doing that step, it's best that we discuss about shells. Like you would find that there are basically two kinds of shells. So, what is actually a shell? I mean, it is some kind of an interface that you get from the victim, the target machine. Okay, in which you can operate as an user. Uh, so there are basically two kinds. I'll just show you a diagram. Okay, well, let's see what is a reverse shell first. So you remember in one of the 90% of the time you would be dealing with reverse shells. Why? Because it helps you, you know, evading networks. Okay, because most of the time the shell uh, connects back from the target to the machine in which you are there, you are operating. Okay, and usually that traffic is not blocked by a firewall. Uh, But if you try, but sometimes, like 10% of the times, if there is no option, in that case, you have to use bind shell. So let's have a look at the diagram of a reverse shell. Like, what does it mean? So let's say there are two boxes. One is attack box, on which you are there as an attacker, and there is a target. So let's say 192.168.1.2, and you are there on 1.1. So you send up some, like this example is using a netcat. So let's say on the target, when you have actually sent the payload, now you want, and you are listening on your machine for that particular target to execute some kind of a shell and connect back to you. Okay, so that is reverse shell, wherein the connection, like the server which wants to connect to it, is listening on your machine or your box, and the targets connects back whenever a shell is executed there over TCP. Okay, then let's have a look at the diagram of bind shell. So it's like from where the target would be listening for you to connect. Okay, so it would be something like this. So again, a shell is there, initiated on the target, and you try to connect to it. Okay, I hope that explains the difference between the two. Similarly, with respect to payloads, you have two types. Okay, or the exploits that we are going to discuss. Sometimes payloads are part of the exploit as well. There are two types of payloads you would come across: staged and non-staged. So what's the difference? So in case of non-staged payloads, all of the shell code which is there available will be sent at once. But in case of staged payloads, it is sent in stages. And both of these have their own cons, pros and cons, right? So these non-staged payloads are larger in size, and they might not always work. Okay, but staged payloads might work, most of the time, but they are a little bit less stable. So what does it mean? Like, what is less stable? So it might actually disconnect you from the target, and you might have to send it again and again. Okay, how would you differentiate between these when you are there in Metasploit? So you would see when you actually search for exploits, the ones, just pay attention to this forward slash which is there. Okay, and pay attention to this underscore that is there. So in case of non-stage payloads, underscore is used between the words meter operator and reverse. Okay, and in terms of staged payloads, a forward slash is used. So when you actually load a payload by using the word use, the command use, and when you give the path, sorry, when you use an exploit, then a payload is sometimes automatically selected by Metasploit. So, but it might not be the correct payload. Okay, so you have to try it, whether it works or not. So if it does not work, let's say it by default selected some kind of a staged payload, wherein it would send the shellcode stage by stage, okay, a piece by piece. You would, can understand it that way. Okay, and it might not work. Then you would have to configure it and use, a non-stage payload, which might work. Okay, so we'll see that. So just to clear that these two differences you should understand: bind shells, reverse shells, and staged and non-staged payloads. And for the purpose of interview also, sometimes when you're there and whenever you're talking with the community members, you should be aware of these terms. Okay, so let's we found the exploit. Let's load it by using the word use, I mean using the command use. So let me clear the screen, and by clicking on the up arrow you can actually go to the previous commands. Okay, so here in our case we are going to use this one. Okay, MS17010 eternal blue. which is an exploit. So we say use. We can either give this number which is there on the far left, or we can give the whole path. Okay, let me give that number. So as soon as I use the word use, and you can see the message that it has shown that no payload was configured for this exploit. Okay, so it has defaulted to a, yeah, you would have guessed it right. That is a reverse TCP staged payload. Okay, for Windows. Let me just clear the screen. So now when you've used the word, use the command use, you are in the context of a an exploit. Okay, then you need to, for to understand and to configure as to what values need to be uh, set before you can actually use it for exploit or for exploiting the target, you have to use options. Let me decrease the screen size. Okay. Okay. So these are some of the values it requires before you can actually run this exploit. So you can see most of the values are auto populated, and if there are some values such as SMB pass or SMB user, they are not mandatory, they are optional. But the ones that are required, we need to configure them. Okay. And then it has automatically selected the payload and the values for it. Yeah, the port on which it would be listening or not. Okay. So let us set these values, and we would set our host, the target host. We can also specify a CIDR notation by giving the, if we want to basically send this to a subnet, a range of hosts. Okay, or we can pass the file path also to it. So as of now, we have only an IP. Okay, so we'll use that. And one thing which is important about configuring the L host, means the local host, the interface with which it needs to connect back, or basically the process that would be listening, on your PC, it would be listening on one particular interface. So when you actually connect to a VPN, you might have an IP address which it has not automatically figured out. So that you have to give yourself. It might have picked up a wrong IP. So let's first set the R host and then the L host. Okay. So we use the, okay, let me clear the screen. So we use the command set, which is to set the value within the scope of that is limited to this particular workspace and this particular uh, exploit. So we say set R host and we give the IP. Okay. So which is, okay. And for configuring the L host, because I think that it has not picked up the right interface, okay, we need to check it with ifconfig. So when you are connected actually to a VPN, it might actually, uh, you know, initiate and create an interface called Tune1. So I know that the VPN that I am connected to actually has this IP address. I'll just copy it and I'll set the payload option of hell host to this value. Okay. Let's check again by typing options. So once you use the word command set to set the value, those values would appear here, okay, against those variable names. Okay. Now, one more thing is there that sometimes a request to a particular port is usually blocked by the firewall. Okay. So yeah, if you have specifically configured your firewall in some other way, and if it's a sophisticated way, then please create a rule so that it can allow and invert traffic to that particular port with this interface and with this. And the protocol, you know that it is a TCP, so you will have to specify the protocol as well for writing that rule. So for this demo, I'll just check whether the firewall is up or not, and I'll disable it. Okay. So I can see that it is inactive, and I don't have to actually bother much about it. So we are good to go, right? So as soon as the options are configured, we use the word either run or we use exploit. So we say exploit. So this is how it would actually send, keep printing the messages for you. So with the messages, you can see that it has been able to overwrite something successfully. And whenever you see a message called sending stage from a stage payload, it means it's a positive sign that yes, you are actually able to execute some kind of a code there. And once it gives a yeah, so now you can see that we are actually in the meterpreter shell. Okay. Sometimes uh, when you actually are exploiting or sending an exploit, you might actually land up in the targets or the host's uh, native shell. Like in case of Windows, you might get a command prompt. And in that case, you would have to actually upgrade that particular shell to meterpreter shell because it is much more useful in terms of the commands that it has, and the utilities are much more better. Okay. So from this particular message, win, which is returned, and there's a green sign, you can like green highlighted plus signs, you can see that it has actually been able to create a shell, get an access. So this is the step of gaining access. Okay. And then you can try a lot of other commands once you are there in the meterpreter shell. Okay. Okay, there is no clear command here. So I just typed help, and I'm going to uh, just scroll through whatever commands that are available for you to execute on the target. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The help menu alias is question mark. Okay. So you can get the user ID, and you can actually ask display the information about this post exploitation module, right? Now, let's say if you do not have admin access, then you can use the migrate command to uh, migrate the current running process to a process which has the higher privilege. So that would be like privilege escalation. Okay. And if you want to pivot into other machines, then you can use these commands. Okay. By doing the by managing the private listeners. Then you can use the word quit, or you can read data from a channel. There are so many commands. The one that are quite useful in the beginning are this one. Maybe you want to have a look at the directories which are there in the current or the present working directory, which all files are there on the Windows. Okay, then rest of commands are there, but it's best not to make some modifications by using or by creating some directories, because whenever you try to use these commands, some of the events are fired and it would actually alert the IDSs. Okay, then you can actually look at the interfaces by using ipconfig if it is Windows, if config if it is Linux. So meter shell is something that can be used across operating systems. Okay, then if you want to clear the event log, you can use clear rev, or you can use execute command to execute something there. Let's say if you want to get the ID of the system, then you can use get sid. You can get a uid. Okay, the user that is running the service can be you know with this command you can actually get that user. Then ps, okay, list of running processes on the machine. This is quite important. So these are the ones that I'm highlighting are the ones good for while you are taking the beginner step. Okay. Then there are like user interface commands also. You can basically dump the keystrokes. Okay, and you can start and stop the keystrokes. Then we discussed about key logging and all that. Then we can take the screenshots. Then we can snoop using the webcam. We can list the webcams whether there or not. You can start a video chat. Okay, you can play an audio file. You can get system by elevating a privilege to the local system. Okay, so these are some of the useful commands. Other than that, I'll let you know some more. Now, let's say if you end up modifying some files, timestamps of some files, then you can manipulate them using timestamp. Okay, and hash dump is also very useful that we would be using. Okay, but first one is to check whether what kind of access this particular process which is spawned has on the target. Okay, then for that you can use either, which won't actually give you much information, but you can see that it is actually an anti-authority system, which it is this particular process has been spawned with administrative rights, and you can confirm that. Let's say if you want to go into the shell, the native shell of the operating system, then you can use the command shell. Okay, so you can see that the Windows command prompt shell is there with you, okay, on the client, on your machine. And there you can say, who am I, to check, the authority, the privilege level. Now, most important part is that you might be using one or multiple modules, and you might have to switch between sessions while you are there in Metasploit. Okay, so to send a session backwards, like in the background, you have to use Control Z. Okay, and that it would say that whether it is going to go in the background channel or not, and it will ask for a confirmation. So you press Y and press enter. Okay, and if you are there in the meterpreter shell, that also can go in the background, and then again you can press Control Z and it would go in the background, right? So you're again switched back, the session is there, it is established, it is still connected, and you are there in the context of a module in MSF console shell. Let me just clear the screen. So now let's say you have come out of a session and you want to go back and connect to it. Then you can use command sessions to see which all sessions are available. Okay. So there is a connection which is established between the attacker machine and the victim. Okay. So let's say you want to connect back to it. Then you can say sessions and you can specify the ID. So you will go back inside the interpreter shell. Okay. So within the shell, you can actually use hash dump for it to bring you the hashes. Earlier in my previous sessions, I was giving the example, okay, by using IAM packets utility to actually dumping the hashes from a shared drive, right? But now you are actually connected and they are on the host which you're exploiting. So you can use hash dump to do that. Okay. Now there's one more command that you could use. There's a module actually which you could use to dump these and store these into Metafloid database itself. Because if you have to scroll up and down, and then either you can keep these hashes for later use by copy pasting them in the text file. Okay, or you could use that particular post module, post exploitation module, to dump these things. Let's try to do that. I'll just send this shell to the background by pressing Control Z, interpreter shell. Okay, by pressing Y, I'll clear the screen and I'll search for, okay, a post module which can gather the hash dump for us. So you can see that there is a module called post windows gather hash dump. Okay, so let's use that. So you might have guessed it already, right? That we can say use, and we could give the whole path or the number. I think it was 17, right? Yeah. So now we can, it is again like the same exploit module which was there. Again, the post exploitation module is also for, it also follows the same syntax. Okay, same terminologies. So when we look at the options that we need to configure, it asks for a value of session. So we know that we have a session and existing sessions uh, with the ID of 1. So we can configure that using the command set. So we say set session and we give the value. Okay, let's again check with the options whether it is it's been updated or not. I'm again clearing the screen. So you can see that it has been configured. So now let's run it. Earlier we used the command exploit. Now we using the command run. So what it would do is like it would fetch those details about the hash dumps from the target, and it will store those credentials, okay, and will dump them in your local database. Now you can see there is actually some kind of a password hint also it has figured out for a user called John, right? Which looks like some kind of a non-default user, because you usually found a user called administrator or a guest on the target, right, on a Windows machine. But here you can see that there is a user with SID 1000 called John, Jon. So it says that nah boy, I ain't sharing nothing with you or something, like doesn't want to share the password, right? So we have been able to exfiltrate some information from the target, and now we can actually use this hash or these hashes to crack the passwords either locally or maybe if you remember from the scans, there was a service running on 3389. 3389, I hope you're aware that RDP is there. Like it means that you can actually, if you have the user ID and password, you can initiate a remote desktop connection to this machine. Okay. So let's take example of a non-default user's hash to crack it. So in case of NTLM hashes, take the one value that I have highlighted with the mouse here, and so that you don't have to do it locally, you can, because it's computationally it is expensive, you can go to a website called crackstation.net and you can enter the hash. Okay, let me just zoom it for you, and you can crack this hash, or maybe it will give you some kind of a password. Okay, so see, so it has figured out that it was the type of the hash was NTLM, and it has actually figured out the clear text for it. So this is the password. You can make note of it somewhere. So I'm just saving it here. And locally, by using John the Ripper also, you can do that in Metasploit. Okay, but just because the my PC is not that advanced and it does not have a very powerful CPU, so it might not be able to do that. But let's try that. Okay, I'll just clear the screen. Okay, in earlier versions, it was JTR. Okay, John the Ripper. But in probably a new version, you would see something like okay, I think it's not there. In new versions, it is crack windows. Yeah, there's an aux, aux module called crack windows. It is a password cracker for Windows in Metasploit. Okay, so we can use that again. I'm clearing the screen, so you can use. Wait, I did not copy the path of that. Yeah, so I searched, and then I am using it. Aux, analyze, and crack windows. So now I am in the context of this analyze crack windows. Okay. Again, we'll look at the options, and there are many actually. And the auxiliary description also, you can see that if you want to use John on the local system, you can use with the help of this module. Okay. Yeah. See, it requires a config, but it is not mandatory. And a custom word list. Okay, and a cracker path, which actually are not, nothing is mandatory here. Like so, by default, it would look at the creds that were stored. Okay, by using the command creds, you can see that these credentials were actually stored from our last, post exploitation step of bringing those details back, like earlier the module that we were using. Okay, for the hashdump related module, what it did is like it has stored these details. So and there's another related module would actually start cracking these hashes. for us. Okay. So let's because there was it was asking us to not to set anything. We can actually run it. Let's see. Oh, it has failed because of some error, right? Custom. Wait, let me just check the options again. Custom word list, right? It was. Yeah, it says that it is not required, right? It should have worked. But anyways, let's give some path to the list of words. Okay. In our previous sessions, we were using, a password list, right? So I'll just go. Some. Let's say you get access to, uh, leaked password list. You have created your own list of passwords. Then you can give that. Yeah, we have this. Like we have a list of. Initiative. Yeah, it's a very long list. Okay. Okay, just we won't spend much time on that because it might be able to crack or it might not be able to crack. So let's just see whether it is working or not. Okay. So let's take this path. I'll just copy this. Okay. So we say set custom word list and we give the path. So it has taken the value. So let's check it again whether this value is populating or not. Yeah, so it has taken that value. So now let's run it. Okay. Yeah, so it has started cracking it for us. So I don't know, but how much time it is going to take. Let's see. So we checked it on crackstation.net. It took not more than like 2-3 seconds. Maybe it is using a rainbow table and it already has mapped, this particular password to its corresponding hash, and it was able to search it faster. Okay. So let's wait for like few more seconds. If it doesn't, it's not able to figure it out, then I'll just close it. Meanwhile, we'll just have a look at the topics that were there. So yeah, that was the last one that I wanted to discuss. So just to reiterate and go through the steps again, like after you have done the footprinting activities, you have done vulnerability, assessment or analysis, and you have figured out that these are the vulnerabilities which can be exploited on a target. You use a tool which or a framework such as Metasploit, which covers the whole life cycle of pen testing stages. Like all of the stages are there. So because we started from scanning and we did not do additional steps of enumerating, maybe additionally we could try connecting to probably non-authoritative Samba shares that are enabled by using SMB client, or maybe would have tried other methods of dumping the hashes externally without connecting to the machine. without gaining access. But as I also mentioned in my earlier sessions, that a little bit of enumeration is okay, uh, you know, while you are footprinting. So let's say you've completed those steps and you have the target machine. Now the next step for you is to gain access and foothold. Then it is best to begin with a tool such as Metasploit. So it has modules. So, and with the help of some basic commands that I mentioned in this lecture, you can actually initiate scans, set the options using, by using the variable values, using the word called set, run those exploits. Uh, if you log on as a normal user, then probably you could do additionally, you could actually, okay, you could actually look at the list of the processes, okay, and by looking at the process table, you could see even if the current process is not running under administrative access, you can use the command called migrate, and you can specify the migrate the ID of the process, and Metasploit will actually help you gain or become that process. But it is a little unstable, so it might break in between. So you will have to probably run the exploit again. Okay, but that is how you would will have to try. Then we discussed the concept of bind and reverse shells. Most of the time you would be using reverse shells, but if there is no option left and you've tried it many times, then you can use bind shells. And in terms of exploits and payloads, uh, in terms of payloads, there are two types: staged and non-staged. So I told you that underscore and with the forward slash, you can identify within the Metasploit that whether a payload is staged or non-staged. So they both have their own benefits and cons. So if something is not working with the staged one, try the non-staged one. Okay. But you saw an example that the default payload, which was picked up by Metasploit itself, was working on this particular vulnerable machine. Then we discussed some commands of meterpreter shell. So sometimes if you don't get the meterpreter shell, then you would have to upgrade your current shell to the meterpreter shell. Okay, there is a module also related to that. I think it is set to meterpreter. That payload is there with Metasploit. So, but here in our case, we were able to spawn up a meterpreter shell over the TCP, right? And with the help of commands like sessions and by pressing keystrokes such as Control Z, we were able to switch back and forth. Okay, and we were able to use multiple modules, and we were able to connect back to existing sessions that are there. Then once you have access to the machine, you can perform other exploitation steps. You could execute a binary, you could upload a file, you could download a file. But in our case, we actually dumped the hashes in this particular demo. We dumped the hashes, but we could actually create, you know, we could specify system info, and we could write it to a file and use the command called download to download that particular file from the meterpreter shell. And then offline, we could analyze it on various other exploit DB or other platforms to understand that related to this particular vulnerability, what all we could gather from the internet. Okay. And with respect to searching the exploits, the first place is to search for CVE details and exploit DB. And there are times when people actually search for exploits on darknet also, so you can do that. But most of the time, it's not very reliable, and you might have to pay for some of the services there. Okay, but for CEH activities, I don't think you would actually will have to ever do that. It is best to go through disclosures and read the information that is already legally and legibly available on the internet. So then, in this particular case, we were able to dump the hashes, and by using crackstation.net, we were able to even uh, crack the hash, and we could recover the password. Okay. And we were trying to do it locally also. I don't know whether so I can see that Meterpreter session itself has closed, and something has happened here. Okay. Okay, so I don't know, some error would have happened to crack the password locally. So this step is actually always very unstable. Cracking the passwords requires a lot of computing power, and other prerequisites are there. It's best to use rainbow tables approach. So that is it for today.